Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. Check us out on Patreon, and a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, check us out. The link is in the description. And a big shout out to our good friends at Dice Legion. Use the promo code SINISTER, get 10% off all of your purchase. With that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're talking about the Great Old One. The Great Old One Warlock comes to us from the player's handbook. It was one of the first subclasses out. It is not an easy subclass to play. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of elements involving espionage, being secretive, being a little bit of a face, a little deceptive. So you got to have a little bit of guts and outside of the box thinking for this really to work. This is going to be one of those subclasses that you're definitely going to want to lean into Eldritch Blast. So you'll probably be getting Agonizing Blast, and that'll keep your damage good basically all game. So this is more of a concept about how to build a character that's based a little bit more around the mind and being more of a psionic almost kind of character. So if you're into that big brain stuff, that illithid kind of world, definitely check this out. It's very H.P. Lovecraft oriented. There's a lot of great stuff involved with nightmares and reading minds and manipulation through thought. Definitely check that out if you're interested in some sort of ideas or theories on how to build a character. The great eldritch horror that is the Great Old One has a couple of great spells from the spell list that it gives to you, and I just want to make sure I mention some of my favorites. Dissonant Whispers is incredible as a spell. I love the fact that you can just whisper something and it causes an enemy to just flee. It's great when one thing is close to you and you think you can make that save, or you just want to get someone away from an enemy or a party member away from something that's very dangerous. So you can use that on whatever's close to it and make that run away and save your friend from having to use a disengage, and maybe that actually might be more viable. It's a little bit big brain. It's a great spell just as it is, so you can use it in a couple of ways, which makes it so viable. Also, if you're going to play a high level campaign, Tasha's Hideous Laughter is definitely something you're going to want to keep on you. It's great as a disabling spell, and you'll need it for one of your abilities later on, but we'll get into that a little later. Phantasmal Force is just a great way to be creative and scary. I love it. Also, you get Dominate Beast. Later, you get Dominate Person. You get Evard's Black Tentacles. All of which, those spells, although some of them are higher level, are great spells that are very viable and can be used in a variety of different scenarios. It's a great way to really get a feel for the mental abilities of a Great Old One. They all have to do with basically invading the mind of someone, taking control of someone or something, or using evil tentacles to do your bidding. It is a great setup for who your character is. You're not going to run up and punch things. That's really not who you are. You are more of a puppet master. You are stand back and use your mind and use that to crush and debilitate everything that's in your way. It's very cool. You definitely want to lean into that kind of a theory behind your character. You really don't want to be in melee with this kind of a warlock. Awakened Mind. Starting at first level, your alien knowledge gives you the ability to touch the minds of other creatures. You can telepathically speak to a creature you can see within 30 feet. You don't need to share a language with the creature for it to understand your telepathic utterances, but the creature must be able to understand at least one language. For any spells or anything that requires you to say a verbal component to an enemy, this will bypass that. You don't need to be able to have anything understand you normally when you're speaking vocally, because you can use your mind and just send that thought through the telepathic utterances that you make. It is not going to ring through as if you technically are speaking, because if they've heard your voice, they won't necessarily know what that sound is emanating in their mind. A lot of the times it's going to sound like a guttural utterances, just strange amoebic sounds. So there's a great necessity in talking to your DM and letting him know, or understanding that this isn't just you telling someone something like message or sending. This is you using a strange non-language to communicate ideas that anything that knows a language will understand. Because if you're in a very heavy role-playing scenario, this is a scenario where they might want to know who you are, and you might not want to share that information, and you might use this to communicate with someone of very good standing or in a position of power, and not have them know you're speaking to them. It can be very, very dynamic in how you do that. It takes a little bit of guts and a little bit of planning on your side, but this is a very powerful role-playing, adventuring, and socially driven tool. Having high charisma on top of that, this is going to work out very, very well for anything that's going to involve being a face or being able to maybe manipulate other circumstances. Maybe you're in the middle of a negotiation with two other parties. You can use one of them and try and send a message to them and have it not come from you, and try and shift the balance of where people are leaning in agreements to your side. Creativity is very powerful with this build because of that, and it's a great tool for setting up scenarios where all you have to be is within 30 feet, so you can communicate backwards and forwards with someone. Instead of like setting just one person into scout, maybe you send yourself like 30 feet behind them so you can see them. They can communicate. You can communicate to them and try and figure out what's going on and relay that message to anyone that's around 30 feet. There's creativity that can be a lot of fun. Entropic Ward. At 6th level, you learn to magically ward yourself against attack, and to turn an enemy's failed strike into good luck for yourself. When a creature makes an attack roll against you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on that roll. If the attack misses you, your next attack against the creature has advantage if you make it before the end of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. This is great, especially if you get hit with a critical attack. This will definitely give you an opportunity to maybe even just dodge that attack completely. It is very, very important for you to try and use the advantage you gain from this with something big. If you have a spell that requires an attack roll, fantastic. This is something you definitely want to use with that. Say you have Vampiric Touch. Having advantage on that first hit might guarantee you survive if you're at low HP. There's a lot of different things you can do with this. Using it for just a cantrip might not be your best opportunity, but if you have a spell that does something incredible, guaranteeing that it hits might make the difference between winning or losing a fight, or regaining some HP, or getting out of a really, really bad scenario. Play around with your class and really don't forget about this. You get this back on a short rest, so you should be using this almost every other fight, or every 2 or 3 fights, depending on how your campaigns go about dealing with short rests. You're a warlock, you're going to be pushing for those short rests pretty often anyway, so you want to make sure you get at least one use out of this before you hit that short rest. Thought Shield. Starting at 10th level, your thoughts can't be read by telepathy or other means unless you allow it. You also have resistance to psychic damage, and whenever a creature deals psychic damage to you, that creature takes the same amount of damage that you do. Now, understand a couple of things. It says that creature takes the same amount of damage that you do. So, you do have resistance to psychic damage, so that will be diminished already from resistance. So, you will not be giving out full damage of what you initially would have been receiving. Dependent on whatever psychic entity you are involved with, this is going to be very powerful. If you're invading an illithid area, not being able to have your thoughts read is very, very important. That's like the better version of stealth for that scenario. Sometimes in heavy role-playing scenarios with certain types of entities at high magic areas, people trying to read your mind might be really common. It depends on the campaign you're in, but most of the time there's not going to be a lot of entities that are reading your minds and trying to figure out what you're doing, unless they're trying to communicate with you for some nefarious reason. Like they're trying to lure you into their lair, or they're trying to maybe get you to do something. that you really shouldn't be doing. Depending on what that is, having your mind being able to be read is detrimental for you to being able to negotiate yourself and having a position of power within that circumstance. The psychic resistance, psychic damage isn't very common, but if you're fighting a lot of things like illithids or psionic entities or things that have similar psionic abilities, then it becomes more important. Psychic damage is one of those harder damages to get resistance to, but again, it's a very hard damage type to encounter, but an extra resistance isn't going to hurt you. Overall, this is mostly equally more social and adventuring as opposed to actual combat mechanics. So it's kind of a small buff, but again, this is the kind of character you go heavy into Eldritch Blast with, so you should be ranged, you should be staying far away from the party so you're not caught in AoE, and you should be able to maintain a good social and adventuring ability because you have high charisma and your ability to use your awakened mind. Create Thrall. At 14th level, you gain the ability to infect a humanoid's mind with the alien magic of your patron. You can use your action to touch an incapacitated humanoid. The creature is then charmed by you until a remove curse spell is cast on it. The charm condition is removed from it, or you use this feature again. You can communicate telepathically with the charmed creature as long as the two of you are on the same plane of existence. This is a very, very complex ability. So when something is charmed, it won't fight for you unless it is normally inclined to do that kind of a thing. So if you take a soldier and you use Create Thrall, they are inclined to fight and protect for the people that they care about, their loved ones, their comrades in arms. That is a logical reason why they would fight for you. Really talk to your DM if you make it to a level that you can actually do this, because it becomes very, very complicated. It's very, very hard to depict how these things work. Say you're fighting an orc chieftain at this high level and you manage to incapacitate him and you create Thrall. The chieftain doesn't have to fight, but he can order his minions to fight for you. You now have a mobile orcish horde waiting for your orders. It is very complex. It can change a lot of things, and in a heavy role-playing environment, this can be game-changing. This can make the DM throw the entire script out of the way. Keep in mind that they need to be incapacitated. So what is one of the best ways to incapacitate someone? Tasha's hideous laughter. It incapacitates them and makes them laugh on the floor, rolling around until the time ends. You get that on once, you walk over, touch, bang, you have a Thrall. And you didn't have to hurt it, it just had to fail a wisdom save. Granted, higher level things, doing that wisdom save really dependent on what kind of circumstance you're in. But any minion, any extra damage, anything that you can do will help you in combat. In socially prestigious circumstances, having a very powerful ally agree with everything you do and back you up will open some doors that were previously weren't available to you. So in a heavy political intrigue campaign, if you make it up this high, this is a powerful ability, because this will change the landscape of the political systems running in your games. You can use this on kings if you get them incapacitated. It's dynamic, but it requires a lot of thought and requires a lot of understanding of the permanence of this. It does not end. No one knows that they're cursed in this way. It's not really a curse, so it's hard to depict if anyone can just check magically and see if anyone's under this circumstance, because it's not really a spell. It's more like an infection or a disease. Our final thoughts. The Great Old One holds a very special place in my heart, as it was the first 5e character that I made, and I thoroughly love the depth that you can get in this class. I like the availability that you can really, really dig into this being like an eldritch horror adjacent character. Like, you have a lot of wherewithal for giving into fears and disables and being weird and strange and and muttering to yourself while you draw on the walls. Like, there's a lot of fun character insanity to have with this, and in the right hands, in the availability of someone who's creative enough and cunning enough socially and political campaigns, this can go the distance. Again, if you're looking for damage dealing builds, this probably isn't it, but realistically, with Hex and Agonizing Blast, you cover 90% of the damage output necessary. You do have a great amount of disables that you can use, which is making you a little bit more available for doing more, a little bit more utility based, a little bit more disabler than you would normally. And I encourage everyone, when they pick a subclass that does have domain spells or additional spells added onto their spell lists or whatever, to really try and take some of those to really grab the full feel of what it's like to be that kind of character. I think it makes a real big difference, and it helps change you from being the same exact warlock every single time. That being said, I happen to really love this class. I think it's great. I love this subclass a lot. I love the idea of Dendar the Night Serpent, Ganadur, that which lurks. Like, there's a lot of cool lore behind a lot of these characters. A lot of different types of races really fit in very well into this subclass. And it's a great way to challenge yourself into doing unusual things in social environments. That being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. Thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys for what you do for the channel. A big thank you to Dice Legion for all your help, and the promo code Sinister if you do want to purchase any dice bags, or other ttrpg actual items. And thank you for giving a Spooky Kid a chance.